Brilliant. So this morning I'm going to be talking to Bob Scott for our Who's in the Room section. Now, Bob's an interesting chap because he's here to talk to us about cocktails. Okay, who doesn't love a cocktail? So basically, Bob's got an excellent track record in developing major projects across the UK: fast food, retail, banking, the satellite industry. I thought was particularly interesting in his bio. Who knew? He's got an engineering background. And many years in customer relations, and that's also an interesting combination because a lot of engineers don't actually like people that much. So there we go. On the leisure side, Bob's a film extra. Okay, and he's appeared in various different films and TV shows, and his hobbies are in amateur radio and flying helicopters. So I thought that was a fabulous bio. So Bob, tell us about the first cocktail you ever drank.
Oh, good heavens! Do you know this was on a firm's do, and this is what got me bitten. We won an award for a holiday in Portugal. Now it was 4 days. Never been to Portugal in the 80s. And in the evening, you had a free cocktail hour. I had never, ever had a free cocktail hour. And you got to realise there was probably 100 people there, and I had to behave myself. And it was fantastic because I've never forgotten. And it was made with a brandy from Portugal, and you can buy it. I don't know if you can probably get it on the internet. I always keep a bottle handy. It's got a unique taste. It's something I've never forgotten. It was a coffee cocktail. I've got absolutely no idea what it was called because, yes, it was an interesting evening. And what I will say is it actually saved me from being ill. Now, you probably don't realise, but brandy is actually very good for you and it thins the blood. We had a day out the next day up the mountain, free food, all this sort of thing. Myself and my wife, who doesn't eat meat, were the only people that weren't ill and went to hospital because the chicken that we were given had been out in the sun for about 4 hours, nicely warmed. So when you ate it, there was probably 20 people that were still in hospital, never went home. It was that bad. Sterilised stomach. Absolutely fantastic. That's why I keep a bottle handy.
Brilliant. Who knew? So, what is the furthest you've ever travelled for one of your cocktail ingredients?
Ah, right. The furthest that I've obtained a cocktail ingredient is I got somebody to go to Japan because there is what's called a, now how do you pronounce it? Habu sake. Now it's the wine from a pit viper. If somebody's on the internet now, please just type in HABUSAKE. It's on the island of Aquana. It's where the blackbird SR-71 is based. And if you look at the tail of a blackbird, it's got a snake coiled around it because blackbird is also called habu. It is an aphrodisiac and it's a poisonous snake they put in a bottle. And I haven't got it here. I've got it in my storage because I keep it cool. And let's put it this way. It tastes rather odd, but somebody wanted it. It took me probably 6 months to go and get it or get somebody to get it for me. And I'm probably the only person in the UK that's got it because I don't know. I've never seen it anywhere else. And it's interesting. So if somebody can put their hand up and say, I've got it, put a picture on to show you exactly what it is. It's very, very unusual.
Brilliant. Okay, so I've been on your website and I've had a look at it, and you've got some pretty funky cocktail names. How do you come up with the names?
Right. What we tend to do for, let's take something very simple, a Cosmo, a great cocktail. So what we've done, we've called it a raspberry Cosmo because it's made with raspberries instead of cranberry juice. And to make it really great, we've got the raspberries from Scotland. And when you open this, they taste absolutely fantastic. So all of our cocktails have got a twist, like it's a mocha martini. So it's slightly different. So we're keeping in the tradition of the same cocktail, but we're giving it a twist, a niche twist. And people will hopefully associate, they say, well, I want a Cosmo. Well, okay, it's a raspberry one. And like the old-fashioned, blood orange old-fashioned. Now that's 12%. Now you won't find that in a supermarket. Supermarket cocktails are about 4, 5, 6. So what we do, if we can't change the name too much, we'll do something else with it. And that's what we tend to do. We'll sit around in a room and think, right, what's the next one? And we've got 3 or 4 on the go now that we're thinking of, well, for the new year, because obviously it's too late now. And that's sort of what we do. And obviously the branding and all the rest of it to go behind it. So it isn't just the name. It's actually trying to get the whole branding right and associated with some of the other branding. So yes.
Brilliant. What's your favourite cocktail? Come on.
Right, because I'm a bit large, I'm very partial to what they call a Mai Tai. Now, a Mai Tai, it's been around quite a long time. It's 2 rums. It's a light rum, a dark rum. Orange Curaçao, because I love orange, and a little bit of almond syrup. I think it's called, I can never pronounce it. Orchid, that's it. It's basically just a little drop of almond syrup. So you'll shake that, other than the dark rum, give it a shake. Put it in a lowball glass, an old-fashioned glass, what you call it, and then you pour the dark rum on top of it, and it just looks absolutely magnificent. There's just anything. I think any cocktail that's sweet. I think my favourite base drink is Southern Comfort. That goes a long way.
The next question you've given me is hilarious. It says, tell us about the hen parties.
Yes. Okay, I can't say too much.
What stays on hen party stays on hen party, or what happens on hen party stays on hen party? Come on.
Yes, well, they sometimes have butlers in the buff. Now, unless you've been to a party with a butler in the buff, the butler just wears a little pinafore on the front, nothing on the back. And there was one of the parties that we were there, and they're very handy because they serve the drinks. So we just make them and, do all that good. They're there for a purpose. They're a butler. And went to a party, was it last year? And the guy couldn't believe it because we'd got our canned cocktails, and the girls, they said, right, can you go and make the cocktails? And the poor bloke just driven from London, driven about 3 hours. That's the last thing he wanted to do. When we said, oh, look, all you got to do is put the garnish in the glass and pour it. He was absolutely over the moon. But of course, then it got interesting after a few cans because they started to play Twister. So I left.
And the less said about that, the better.
I wasn't there.
Oh dear. So, coming on to all things sensible, what problems do you solve for people?
Right. Okay. The biggest problem I have to solve, and the biggest problem with our company, is getting the taste right for our cocktails. Because if we don't get that right, it's a huge problem because people will either complain or they won't buy any more. It's like going to a restaurant, isn't it? You go to a restaurant, the meal's awful. You never go back. You actually probably don't complain. You just don't go back. What we don't want is a situation where people buy our cocktails and think that was awful. I won't buy any more. So the big problem is, it's not a problem actually, but it's we've got to find a solution to it. And the other thing is taking calls from customers. A lot of customers want to know the background. So there could be a customer, it could be a trade customer. We obviously do a lot of business with trade customers. We have our retail site, which you looked at, but we have a lot of trade customers, and they have all sorts of queries. We have obviously got other staff who do warehousing, logistics, and all the rest of it. But so many people are curious as to where this all came from, why are we doing this, all the rest of it. So, handle some of those calls.
Excellent. What are the results, benefits, improvements that your clients experience from working with you? Apart from a luscious cocktail.
Well, yeah. Working with, there's myself and there's a guy called Jeff who have been in the corporate world a long, long time. Jeff has got a lot of experience in the hospitality industry. I've got 35 probably plus years in operating in the corporate world. And the biggest thing is building teams. If you don't build your team around you, We've got a team in number 10, haven't we? They haven't built themselves around each other, and they've stabbed each other in the back. No matter whatever your politics are, it's a team. It's running a business. It's just a big business. If you get everybody behind you and you work them as a team, you have a no blame culture, which is what we have. So people do things wrong. They make mistakes. They don't do it deliberately. If everybody's honest enough and everybody is happy to put their hand up and say, look, I've done this, we'll put it wrong, we'll put it right. Now, what you often find, they've done something wrong because the system's wrong. They haven't done it wrong. They've done something wrong because either the computer's told them to do it wrong or they've assumed this is what happens. The big thing is why can we put it right? And, I've run major projects. The last one was 25 million, to give you some sort of scale. The one before that was 8. And I ran it on time and on budget, because it's fine spending all this money. It's fine doing all of this. But if you don't actually watch your costs as well, it can get out of hand. So that's the benefit of working with me and others in our organisation, is experience.
Excellent. And what makes you different to other people who are in the same sector as you?
Oh,
Because there's lots of people in the same sector as you, and quite often I open a can and I go, why? Why have I bothered? Because it's so terrible.
I think, and everybody would probably answer the same thing, but it's an absolute belief in providing the best service that we can. When I say service, that's everything. I touched upon taste, getting that right. That's service. We've got to get the product to you. We have a motto. It's on our literature. The art of no compromise. If you compromise, if you give in and say, well, that'll do, then you're dead in the water. So we don't do that. We try and make everything 100% right first time. And that's why we've got a no blame culture, because if it doesn't go right, the first thing with the customer, and what's so different, is that if I'm involved, I will ask the customer, and let's say late delivery. I mean, that's a common thing for us. We're shipping water around the country and it doesn't turn up for whatever reason. And it is going to be a quarry, it isn't going to be our. I ask them what the impact is on their business. And they said, what do you mean? Well, you had ordered these products for your exhibition. Today is Friday, but your exhibition is next week. Is that a problem if we get them to you next Monday or Tuesday? No, it isn't. So I think what you've got to do is to establish what impact it's had on their business. Okay, it didn't arrive today. I've got a party tomorrow. We've got a major problem. No, I've got a party next Saturday. So the skill is actually, and this is where customer relations, this is where the background of customer service comes in. Talk to them. Say, how can I help? What's happened? What impact have we had? And that's, I think, what makes us different, simply because of experience.
Really interesting. So, how did you get from engineering to niche cocktails, Bob?
Oh, my goodness me. It's a long story, but I'll cut it reasonably short, in that I was in the corporate world for 30 something years. And of course, you get to a certain age and they make you redundant, don't they? Because you've got a company car, company credit card, company, everything. Cheerio, Bob. You're costing us too much. What on earth do you do? So an engineer in customer service, running major projects, I've got to do something totally different. So spoke to my best man, who I've kept in touch with, said, Dave, I'm going to be made redundant. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. And he said, why don't you come and join me? Yeah, okay, what do you do? I sell overseas property. So I left work on a Friday and I was in Spain on Sunday. No decorating, no holiday, no nothing. Learn my trade. And I spent a long time out there learning about customer service. What do people want? They don't know what they want. They want somewhere in the sun, but they don't actually know why they want it. And we sold for lifestyle, not for profit, not for investment. We sold predominantly on the Spanish mainland, Portugal, Italy, various other places. for lifestyle, so somebody could come out and enjoy it. And I did this for many years. Well, of course, you were flying in and out. I was in and out of the Mediterranean every other week, bringing back bottles and bottles of drink. I mean, you can see a few behind me, but I've got another 200 over there in my personal collection. It's got nothing to do with work. And I was networking with B&I because that's the only networking there was, 2001, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I used to go in at 6:30 in the morning and bring cocktails in. I made them up and said, you want to try this? You want to try this? You want to try that? And they used to love me coming in. And then one day, after a few things, they said, why don't you do this as a business? I said, it's selling property. It's getting a bit, it's quite difficult. You've got a huge ticket price. You're asking people to spend 100,000 plus, whatever. Why don't you do that? And I never thought of it. So I did. So I started doing events. Little parties, little birthday parties, 20, 30, 40, got some staff, 50, 60, 70, did a few more, did some business events. I live near a RAF base, RAF Watersham in Suffolk, and I ended up doing their summer ball for 350. And doing all of this, I thought, why am I selling somebody else's drink? Why am I selling Gordon's gin? Why am I selling this? Why can't I sell my own? So I went along to an innovation hub, met somebody that had been got their own coffee business with a partner. And they said, well, if I can sell coffee, I can sell cocktails. And that's where it started, 2018. And it took us 2 years to get the taste right, get the branding right. And of course, we launched on February the 14th, 2020. And on March the 23rd, everybody said, oh, here's all your cocktails back because we can't sell them. We're closed. So we'd shipped out hundreds and we got back hundreds because they couldn't sell them. And then we went online, and that's how we got to be online. And now we're going back to the trade, trying to get the business back that we couldn't get in 2020 and 2021.
Fascinating. I find it really amazing the number of companies that were launching around about that time who have survived. So congratulations, Bob. Well done for that. One last question before we go. What's an easy cocktail for us to make at home? Because Rachel Nash, who's also in this room, is also a queen of cocktails. She's always looking for some tips. So what tips can you give Rachel and the rest of us about making cocktails at home?
Right. Making cocktails at home, I could do a 20-minute demonstration because it isn't that easy. But there's two things. If you want to make it really easy, you make it in a glass, like a high.
Here's one he made earlier.
I can do that. I'll have this. So, got to take a highball glass. The simplest cocktail is a Cuba Libre, which is basically rum, lime juice, and Coca-Cola. Now that is very simple. So you build it in the glass. You don't need anything at all. So you literally put the ice in, put the contents in, give it a stir, do that. Now, of course, the majority of cocktails are made with shakers. And don't get these 3-part things. They're dreadful. And I've got one at home. I've had this. I must have had this 45 years. I think it's the one at first I ever bought. So it's 3 parts. So you've got a measure, you've got a strainer, and you've got the container. You put obviously everything in ice, shake it all about, pour it out, then you find you can't get the top off to get another one. So anybody that's going to make cocktails, get what they call a 2-piece set, which is normally a glass and a metal container, or you can have 2 glasses, or you can have 2 metal containers. You'll see them in bars. The simple thing is you put it in, you put the top on, you shake it, and you pour it. You know, the simplest cocktail I would think is a Cosmopolitan. Everybody loves that. You know, citron vodka, it's Cointreau, you know, it's lime juice and cranberry juice, and you shake it all about, you pour it out, you've got a lovely pink cocktail. And the reason you need a strainer is obviously if you're going to plonk that in a martini glass, you're going to get ice all over the place. So just experiment. And you don't need even a proper shaker. Lots of people have got water bottles, anything with a top, but you need to shake it for 10 seconds. Now, why do you do that? If you go into a bar, let's say at night, what's the temperature in a bar? It's going to be about 20 centigrade. So all the bottles are going to be at room temperature. When you shake it, shake it for 10 seconds, it will take it down to about 4. And that's the temperature you want a cocktail. So if you made a cocktail, didn't shake it, didn't cool it down, it would taste absolutely dreadful. So the hint is shake it and, oh, fantastic.
I can see that Bob's getting excited just talking about it. Bob, thank you so much for joining us this morning to talk about your business. Absolutely fascinating. Does anybody have any questions for Bob?
Probably got loads and I can't
All
think
very
of any.
quiet.
I can't think of any at the moment, but Bob, I was out on the cocktails last night, which is why Vicky mentioned what she did.
Brilliant, Bob. Thank you very much. And if anybody does have any questions, all of Bob's information is available, or you can see through Niche Cocktails on his little screen there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, so now we're going to move into the second part of the interviews, and today I'm really pleased that Rachel, despite being on the cocktails, is here for us. This is where we normally have an expert speaker, but what I spoke to Rachel about is the fact that we have got the South Gloucestershire Business Show coming up on the 9th and 10th of November at UWE, and Rachel is quite heavily involved in the shows, and I thought it would be a great chance to interview somebody about why they're involved, what could have drove them to get involved, and sort of what the benefits they feel are from being involved. So, Rachel, I know you weren't at the Gloucestershire Business Show because unfortunately you got COVID. However, you were at the North Somerset show right at the beginning of the year. So let's start with a really easy question, which is, why did you decide to get involved?
Well, actually, do you know, it was in 2018 when I was doing some networking and Pete was there. It's that long ago, Pete. So at that time, Pete had mentioned about getting involved, but for me, it wasn't quite the right time because I hadn't long started my business and everything. And it just seemed to be, I needed to focus on what I was doing rather than spreading myself too thinly. So it wasn't straight away that I'd done that. But what I did is I made contact with him last year, and it was specifically with the North Somerset Business Show. And I know that Pete had mentioned in the past about having admin support and help. And I know Louise at that time had come in and was doing a lot of that. So I sat down, we had a chat. It was about, right, well, how can I get involved? So I think Pete did a bit of arm twisting, I think it was. It certainly felt like that. And I agreed. Did I agree or did I don't know. But anyway, I agreed to pick up one of the sessions that they were running to do with placemaking in North Somerset. So I got involved initially with the North Somerset show, actually running one of the sessions to talk to the local businesses and find out what their thoughts are and that on there.
So placemaking is a really important part of all three of the shows, Rachel. Can you kind of enlarge a little bit more about what those sessions involved?
I certainly can. So taking on the role of chairing it meant that I took on responsibility to get people in the room to come along and talk to me. So we did a bit of advertising of it, bringing that in, and we got various people into the room. So for the North Somerset show, because the one I was due to do in the Gloucester, because I was off with COVID, we had local colleges that were there. So that was Western. We had Western College in. We had the, I'm going to call her marketing manager for the Sea Monster that was coming. That's there now, but it was a wee bit delayed in the end. And we had other local businesses. We had a youth centre manager. So all the sort of people that have things that are going on and that could actually input into sort of thoughts as to about placemaking.
Brilliant. So you do also have another role within the business, which is more on the administration side of it. Tell us a little bit more about what you do for that side of it.
Right. So the Gloucestershire Business Show, I stepped back from doing the placemaking sessions and took on the responsibility for reception. So part of taking on the responsibility for reception is sending out joining instructions beforehand so people know where they're going, the setting up of the registration desks, and generally having people there who can point people in the right direction, give them some support when they arrive, help point them to parking, because in the Gloucestershire one, it wasn't parking on site. For the South Gloucestershire Business Show, that'll be different again. So it's looking at getting everybody into the building and into the right places.
Brilliant. Obviously, all of us that get involved in the show, we're doing it from a voluntary point of view. We're giving up our time, etc., to get the show up and running. What was your motivation behind getting involved with the show, apart from the fact that Pete was going to break your arm if you didn't?
Yeah. Well, that was a large one. Yeah, there. No, actually, it to me, it seemed a really great way of, when you're exhibiting, of which I did exhibit in the Gloucester one, albeit again, I'm near Vicky, thank you for helping me on that. You only get to talk to people who pass by you and want to talk, really, sometimes. Whereas getting involved in the bit that I'm getting involved in, I get to talk to everybody and I get to see everybody. And it's a really great way of finding out more about people, but you've got more visibility out there. So I'm able to do and show them how I can work, how I can manage a reception area. It's an admin process, regardless of what you're doing, wherever. It's still admin, getting people in, getting things out, getting things done. So I'm showing my skills whilst I'm actually there. So people can actually get to see how I work, how I do things, how I'm communicating. And I think it's just a great way to get your message about you out there.
Excellent. And I know also that you got for the Gloucestershire Business Show, although you weren't there, and I think possibly for North Somerset, you got involved in the young people aspect of it as well. How did you migrate across into that?
Again, that was more about Pete, you know. You're very responsible for an awful lot of things, you know, Pete. You do realise that. So one of the things I've always wanted to do is to give back. So I actually volunteer with a group that's working with young people in schools. And I used to be a trustee of our youth centre. So it's about giving back. And it's that if you can understand what they need, then you can help them to progress further on what they're going to do next. So for me, young people are really, really important. They're the next lot coming through. What do they need? What they're going to be able to do nowadays is so different to what we were doing. And I think it's tougher for them in one respect, but it's easier because there's so many of them are starting out as entrepreneurs now, doing their own businesses as youngsters. Whereas I think when a lot of us were probably young, we wouldn't even have thought about it. You know, Bob's saying that if he knew he could make cocktails all those years ago, he might have just done that and work, you know, and people are saying if they thought they knew they could work for themselves, then they probably would have done. But it's making sure that the businesses and the places have the opportunities for them. It's so important.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree about that. So we've got the show coming up in the next 3 weeks. I think 3 weeks today it will all be over.
Yes. Gosh.
If
Yes.
if I've counted correctly. Pete's kind of nodding at me going, yeah, I think that's right. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing for the show that's coming up, and how that's all going.
Right. So at the moment, I'm communicating with those who have booked themselves in to come along and visit. The exhibitors are looked after in a separate area. So I'm looking at everybody who's coming, keeping them informed, joining instructions, and information on travel will be going out to everybody soon, with reminders a little bit closer, because there's different options in the South Gloucester Business Show for travel than there was in the Gloucester Business Show. So you've got to make sure that they're very specific for it. And then once everybody's there on the day, making sure that they park in the right places. When they get there, smiling from Jill, I'm sure there'll be one or two things there going on, but making sure, yes, they're in the right places, and making sure everybody's registered when they come in. So we'll have 2 desks, one for those who are fast-tracked because they've already pre-registered, and then there'll be those who just turn up and want to register on the day, giving them information as to what's going on, where it's all going on, but also we're still a focal point. So if people kind of wander around and get a bit lost, they can come back to us and say, I've got myself turned around, where do I go for that? Then we can point them back off into the right directions.
Brilliant. And are you involved in any of the individual sessions in the upcoming show?
Not this year. Not this one.
This
Yeah,
year. I
no.
happen to know that you're a very busy lady. So if you could talk to a business who's never exhibited at any of our shows before, or somebody who's never been along and joined in one of the sessions, what would you say to them?
Give it a go. Give it a go. Session-wise, there's lots and lots of different ones that are happening. So there'll be some that you'll just be interested in. There'll be some that will give you insights into things that perhaps you're doing and help you with other areas. And I think exhibiting, there becomes quite a camaraderie of all those who are exhibiting. It's quite nice to meet the others. So what you'll find is that you'll move around the different stores and you'll speak to other people, but you'll get support as well with everybody in there. So I know that if you need to nip off and it's only you and you need to nip out, your next door neighbour is going to look after the store for you, your exhibition for you. They're going to do that because everybody's so open and helpful.
Brilliant. So what do you see for the benefits long term for SOS and yourself of being involved in the shows?
Oh, didn't see that one coming. Obviously, there's a bit of a recognition that the more I'm involved in the shows, the more people will be thinking, oh, Rachel, yes. So we know what she does, but she also helps with the shows. And then maybe people might want to come and talk to me about other support that they might like to have.
Brilliant. So I've also been involved in the show since about this. I met Peter about the same time as you, and certainly I found that it's been really good for raising my awareness in the local community and all of that sort of thing. If somebody says, right, well, I'm only going to the show if I can guarantee I'm going to get business out of it, what would your advice be to them at that point?
Well, it's probably not worth them coming along. It's like going to your first networking, isn't it? People turn up to network and think they're going to walk out of a room with loads of business. It doesn't work like that. You need to schmooze people a little bit, but why would they buy from you versus somebody else in the room? You need to talk to them. You need to show them and demonstrate. You know, you can't just walk in and then walk away with something. It's more about, I think, actually, would you want to do business with that sort of person? Probably, I know I wouldn't. I'd want to get to know them and understand them and make sure that we're a good fit.
Okay then, so if that's that way, how would you then go about, you know, you've met somebody at the show, how would you then go about building that relationship longer term?
I would connect with them in lots of different ways. Get together, have a coffee, have a one-to-one, just generally talk through what we both do. Sometimes you find when you're meeting people for the first time and there's potential there, that while talking to them, they're not in the right place for you, but they might be in a place for somebody you know. So I will give an example recently of somebody that I've done that with, and he wanted some support. We sat down, went through a whole load of things. It's like, actually, do you know what? You're not ready for me yet. You're not clear on what you're doing. So I actually introduced him to a business coach, which is why I work quite well with business coaches. It works both ways. Because he's not ready for my services because he doesn't know what he needs yet and he doesn't even know which direction he's going in. So I think it's a good way. And I think when you're doing things like that and you're honest with people, if they're not ready for you and you're not right at that point in time, they go away with right, well, they were really honest with me. And actually, I do know somebody that might be the right person, or they may come back later on. So I think you just need to be relaxed about it, talk about it. I'd never push anybody to take on a service that wasn't right for them.
Excellent. So, I mean, I've done a little bit of training actually once upon a time about how to go about exhibiting at shows. And I think the point that you make there is absolutely right. It's just like networking, going to a show. It's actually all in the follow-up. It's in the starting the conversations at the show, but then actually doing the follow-up, deepening those conversations and relationships, and that's where the magic happens. So Jill's just put a link into the chat for everybody who wants to see about the event programming. Rachel, if you could have one piece of advice to somebody who was thinking about exhibiting at one of our shows or coming along, what would it be?
I would, one piece of advice, I would probably say, like I said just now, come along. You've got nothing to lose. You've got everything to gain, because people are in the room. They're there because they want to be there. They're there because they want to see what's happening and what's going on. So come along, book yourself in or visit everybody and come and give it a go, because I say you've just got nothing to lose.
Brilliant.
And it's a free event for those coming to visit. So
absolutely. And Jill's just put, know your outcomes. What are you going to get from, or what do you want to get out of going to either exhibit or visit at one of our shows? So Rachel, thank you very much. I'll be totally honest with everybody now. I completely dropped the ball with Rachel's interview and forgot to send her the questions, so she's done amazingly well. Winging it this morning. We do know each other quite well. Does anybody have any questions for Rachel about being involved with the shows? Anything that they would like to know?
I'll just add, I mean, it's been really interesting actually listening to you two talking as third parties to the show. Really fascinating discussion there. But just answering a question that Vicky posed Rachel, interesting about, you know, if you have one word of advice. Something I find myself saying to people who are just going along or people who, for whatever reason, aren't quite ready to exhibit yet is a great way to promote your business that I've observed happen for so many times is look through the program, do a bit of Google research on the subject matter that is in the program, come up with a question that is a really sharp, penetrating question about it. You can get that off Google just like that on almost anything. Wait until that moment in the room goes quiet, where the facilitator or chair inevitably says, now, has anyone got any questions? And there is that moment of pure, unadulterated silence. And you stand up and you clear your throat and you say, hello, I'm Bob Scott from Niche Cocktails. This is what I do for business and this is where I am. Now, my question is bang, and you hit them between the eyes with a question they probably can't answer or are going to go, that's a really good question. And I tell you, the people presenting will go, who's this guy? Who's this guy? Hang on a minute, he knows his stuff. And everyone in the room will go, oh, my word, he's a serious player. And then you walk out the room. And if you and or your team can manage to cover as much of the program as you can like that, it's the fastest way of making a biggest impact for absolutely no cost other than a bit of research that I've ever been. And I've seen a few people do it in an organised way, and it's very effective.